I'm John Ruggiero, and welcome to this episode of New Jersey Paranormal. Joining me today is Daniel Klass, owner of the Hinsdale House in Hinsdale, New York, and author of Hinsdale House, An American Haunting. Thanks for being here, Daniel.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You own the Hinsdale House, which is quickly becoming one of the most famous haunted locations in the United States. But your first experience with the paranormal didn't come at the Hinsdale House. What was your first experience or your encounter?
It all started for me when I was little. You know, I had things happening in the house that were always sloughed off. Being children, we were never told there's spirits in the house. But when I turned 18 and I left my parents' house and I moved in with my friends, I actually went to a little town called Lilydale. It's a lot of psychics are there, and I met up with a psychic by the name of Ellen Bourne. And before I even sat down at her table, she said, "You have spirits living in your house." Weird things would always happen, like my sister's stuffed animals would be moved, crayons would be drawn on the ceiling, just unexplainable things. Nothing very malicious, but I was always very interested in how is this all happening? How does this stuff happen when we leave the house and come back in, and then there's crayons drawn on the ceiling, you know?
Wow.
So I got into researching the house and found out that there were 2 children that had died of cystic fibrosis of the original owners of the house. So we had their names, and she said they were attached to something in the house, and I started thinking what it could be, and then what I found in the attic was a mural of the little boy and the little girl playing with the dog. Wow. And I have that with me to this day. You know, I went back and purchased that house from my parents years later. Because it's like I moved my family in, and they started experiencing some of the same things I did. But now, like, my kids are a little bit more used to it. So.
Well, obviously that sparked your interest in the paranormal.
Yeah, very much so.
You're now a paranormal investigator. You're on a team. How did that lead you to the Hinsdale House and getting involved with it and now owning it?
Well, I mean, I went there with my team in December of 2010. Didn't know anything about the house. The lead of my team said, "We just want everybody to come here. We don't want to tell you the story." So we got there, and I felt creeped out because you guys have been there, right. Going up that little dirt road, and now put yourself in the middle of December, desolate,
that's
cold.
When we were there,
yeah.
Oh,
that's right. Yeah, and it was snowing and just really creepy.
And it is out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, it's a house in the middle of a mountain
by itself,
basically. And we get in there. We're sitting in the living room. The first thing he has us do is watch the episode of A Haunting. That was based on the house, and I'm sitting there thinking, okay, I'm in this house that had an exorcism in it, and it didn't work, and I'm sitting in this house right now, and I've never dealt with anything like that. You know, it's not something I was used to dealing with because it was kind of fresh into my career as far as like going into investigations and stuff like that. So it's creeped me out, but nothing bad happened. I started doing a little research on the house because I kept going back. Wanted to go back again and again, and started uncovering new things like Joan Flo Misnick, who I gave you a clip of what happened to me when I was investigating, and I asked for her. My K2 meter is in my hand. It started lighting up. I started asking yes or no questions, and then when I walked up the stairs, I asked her to hold my hand, and it was like I set it up to a fuse box, the K2 meter, and my whole arm was tingling, and I walked up the stairs, and it stayed lit the whole way up the stairs, up to Mary's room. Wow. Once I went over the threshold of Mary's...
You were by yourself when this happened? Or
we were filming it.
Okay.
We were filming it for an episode. We do an episode, my team, for Paranormal Reality TV on the Roku, called Behind the Shadows. So we were filming that. And when I walked over the threshold of Mary's room, lost it. But I believe she's there. I mean, she was there after the Dandy family and lived there for a few years. So.
And was there electricity in the house?
At that time,
point?
there was no electricity at all. So there was no way for that to be going off. I mean,
but you didn't feel scared. Did the episode of The Haunting have the history besides the...
It was just basically based on the exorcism, and it wasn't true to the story either.
Okay.
Come to find out after befriending Clara and some of the kids and stuff like that.
Well, you mentioned the history, and the book talks a lot about the history, a lot of stories about the history of the Hinsdale. And I read the book, and you and I spoke about some of the things, but there's a lot more in that book. Without giving too much away, what are the type of stories that are in the book that you think contribute to the type of activity that's been going on there for decades now?
There's got to be something with the land, definitely. I mean, it's not just this house. I mean, there have been numerous attempts to try to have the place exorcised, and it doesn't work. So you can't exercise the whole land. You can't exercise the land it's on. And it dates back. I mean, at this point, I've dated it back to the 1600s.
Wow.
With the Hopewell Indians. But we're, constantly trying to put this puzzle together. It's weird that on this property, all the things that have happened, all the documented deaths, all the stories that come up, from the townspeople, and it's an ongoing thing, like for instance, the Hinsdale hanging tree.
Right.
I know that was
featured in
Paranormal Lockdown. Now that tree was the stories I get from the town, because it's their job to plow the street, is that a lot of the plow drivers didn't even want to come up by the house.
They're intimidated.
Yeah, I mean, they knew the story of this hanging tree. It was overlapping. In the book, there's a picture of it. You see how it overlapped on the road, right? Nobody would trim it. Nobody would touch it. It was just there, and it came down by, the story that Mike told me, who's a historian for the town of Hinsdale, is that on a clear night, a bolt of lightning came out of the sky, hit it, and there it lies in the ditch now.
And you've even gotten readings years later, 2008, I think it said in the book that the lightning hit it.
Yeah.
But even to this day, you're getting readings of some kind of energy source.
Yeah, there's EMF coming from it, and we get EVPs down by the tree.
Oh, really?
It's crazy. Like Nick was there in Paranormal Lockdown. He went down into the creek and got EMF down there. And,
it was too cold the night we were there to venture out into the...
Yeah, well, you'll have to come back when it's nice out.
Yeah, we're definitely going to come back. Well, we had a great time there.
The main story that everybody knows about is the Dandy family.
Right.
And that's the big portion of why a lot of people come in, is because it's almost like right out of a horror film.
Right.
The things that happened to that family. There was an exorcism that was done at the house, and since that, shortly after, they still left.
Right.
So I would want to know, have you been into contact with any of the Dandy family and talked to them personally?
Yes.
And also, have they had any more experiences since they've left the house?
They don't really want to talk about it too much, but I do know that their lives, went on. Laura, the daughter that was affected, ended up committing suicide, which is very sad. It happened
over the house?
After they left the house.
Wow.
I don't know if she was dealing with depression or what was happening, but we're in contact with Mary and Clara. Clara's 81 years old now.
Oh, wow.
But she lives in Oregon, I'm sorry.
As far as you know, was that their first experience ever with anything paranormal related?
Yeah, speaking with her and looking at some transcripts, nothing. They moved there from Buffalo.
Wow.
And nothing had ever happened to them prior to that. So. I
mean, the things that they saw in that house, again, I don't want to give too much of the book away, but it is very much like any Hollywood movie that you had seen, Amityville Horror,
right.
Conjuring, just a lot of things were going on in that house and happening to those people. Again, the exorcism was done, but that's factual that it
Correct.
Was done. But after that, you reference in the book that there was another family that had lived there for a short time, and they left in the middle of the night, left all of their possessions, just left everything behind there. Did you or anyone that you know that has ever researched this, has anyone spoken to them?
They actually reached out to me and told me their story. And anytime somebody says, "Oh, I was at that house," or we lived there, or I knew somebody that lived there, I always go dive in to try to find out, hey, maybe there's some more information I can find out. And then she told me the story about her dog, running into a car. Just ran right into a car.
Oh,
like,
God.
What? No dog would do that. Cars, battery stalling all the time when they pull into the driveway.
Wow.
And then whatever was affecting them there, I mean, they felt like they wanted whatever was in the house to not know they were leaving, so they left their stuff. Got in their car and drove away, and then I know that
they just left everything
they
behind.
Left everything
they
and
didn't
started
want anything
fresh.
to be attached.
Mm-hmm.
That is.
And they have. Do you know if they've experienced anything since?
No, they haven't.
Nothing.
So what was ever in the house stayed there.
How many? Do you know how many families lived there between the time the
it's hard.
Dandies left and?
I know some, but it's hard because the Reese family purchased the property in 1969, and they used it as kind of a lease to own type thing.
Okay.
So all these families were basically lease to own, and then they'd break the lease, and then it'd go back to them, and then they'd, so there's really no records of a deed changing place or anything like that. So it's hard.
Back then, this wasn't something that you openly talked about either. So
No.
I don't think they'd really want to put that out there. I wouldn't.
No, but by putting it out in the forefront on TV and things like that, it's helped get people to speak about it a little bit more.
Right, and now it is a lot more mainstream
Correct.
than it was.
Yeah.
You couldn't talk about this back in the 70s or... But when we talk about exorcisms, we think about demons and demonic activity. And I think there are some references that the Dandies did see things that were inhuman.
Right.
So when an exorcism is done and things are still happening like they did to the family that left in the middle of the night, and then again, I watched the episode of Paranormal Lockdown, and there's a scene where Nick Groff speaks to Lorraine Warren, who's probably one of the most well-respected
pioneer,
demonologists that there are, and her advice to him before staying in that house for 72 hours, sleeping in there, is go to church, protect yourself.
Right.
Now, you purchased that building and you say, you want it open for paranormal research. Do you think, your opinion, is there a danger, letting paranormal groups come in, experienced, not so experienced, to keep trying to open that door, that maybe something will come in that is like what was there once before?
I mean, there's always that danger, but for the most part, if you're an experienced team and know what you're doing, then I would let you go in and do some research. I mean, that's part of what we do.
Right.
I mean, you're going into these locations, you don't know what you're going to come across, and I'm giving them the heads up. Hey, this has happened here. And actually, I'll even give you a heads up, because most recently I've found that there was a second exorcism performed inside the house on a person, which I got the story, and I'll be writing about in my second book. But I mean, whatever was there affected somebody else to the point where they had to perform an exorcism on him as well, on him as a person. So, yeah, I mean, there's definitely.
No idea what year that was?
That was within the past 10 years.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's crazy. There's definitely a dark and sinister presence there, and you have to be prepared for it. It doesn't come out all the time.
Right.
I've owned the house for about a year and a half, a little over a year and a half now, and I've seen it happen a few times.
You've seen the dark side.
Yes.
Of the house.
You can feel it. You can feel it change, and I've seen it affect one of my investigators there, and we had to pull him out and snap him out of it, like he was getting possessed kind of in a way, and he stayed away from the house for about 3 months.
So that's interesting, because I want to ask you, we know that watching Paranormal Lockdown, Nick Groff was affected by something even after he left the house. And that's what I wanted to ask, if you yourself or anyone else that you know of has had experiences after they leave the house.
Just the one that I know of for sure, one of my house investigators, Ed, was. That's what, we basically did a cleansing on him and had him stay away for a while just to get his head straight.
Did he say what kind of things affected him? Was it his mood?
He didn't even know it was. Like, his wife was there and there was another investigator in the room, and he didn't know, like, he had changed. Like he was being negative, and he was... it wasn't him, not the type of person that he is.
That's what usually happens in those situations. You don't even know, because I went through something similar where people were telling me that I was much more depressed, that I was much shorter. I had a shorter fuse, and I went to see a medium friend of mine, and she did some kind of cleansing on me, and it made all the difference in the world. I had no idea that I was acting that way for that period of time, but you're right. You don't know what's happening when it's happening, but. Back to the house, when we arrived first to set up, there's no electricity on the second floor, so I'm up there by myself, by Mary's room, and I'm hooking up a IR camera, and I'm putting some gadgets, and I'm making sure all the angles are working, and I felt such a feeling of anxiety, like that eyes-on feeling,
right.
Like something's watching me here. I know something, it felt like something's watching me doing what I'm doing, and I'm up here alone doing it, so I'm thinking... when is someone going to come up here and try to give me a hand? Because
he hollered downstairs.
I did feel like a really feel of like an anxiety come over me, like something's watching me. I feel something watching me. So you do get that feeling, and that's before I really knew any of the stories. And I didn't watch. I went in there just like you said, going in there the first time without really knowing what it was about. I didn't watch Paranormal Lockdown yet. I hadn't read your book. I just talked to you briefly about it. And right away, walking in that door, I mean, it may have something to do with the iron on the door and on the windows. And that's, again, because people come up there now because it's so well known.
Yeah, I mean, the first 3 months that I bought it, it was broken into like 4 or 5 times.
Right.
So I felt like I kept fixing it, and then it kept money down the drain, so I had to invest in those, unfortunately. But it's like a jail.
And that's intimidating enough. You go up this big gravel road, and then there's this house, and then you go inside, and it feels even eerier inside. But you had mentioned something about the pond.
Yes.
Didn't they find?
They found bones out by the pond. Yeah. The pond is actually, when the Reeses bought the property, it was 100 acres originally.
Okay.
And they sub-parceled the properties out around 8 to 10 acres each, and then sold them. Sold them off to try to make a profit on the investment. In order to make the plots more profitable, they put ponds in. So they knocked the barn down and put that pond in. And that was in the 60s, That was right around the time that Ed and Lorraine Warren came to the house. Okay. They called them in for some reason.
So the Reeses
were there.
Called them in.
I don't know that for sure.
Okay.
All I know is that Ed and Lorraine Warren were at the house before the Dandies moved in, so there had to be some type of speculation that something was happening there before they moved in.
Do you ever get intimidated where you just have to go?
You mean just leave the house?
Yeah.
No. I don't know. I feel like this house was a calling to me. Like it's my job to get this story out and preserve it. And I mean, it's amazing how it fell into my lap because I had just closed on my new family home. And then within 2 weeks, they said, basically, you need to come up with another 10 grand if you want this one, this haunted property. And I went and looked at it, saw it needed a new roof, saw the kitchen had black mold, and I'm like, what am I doing? Why am I even thinking of doing this right now? I go, but I felt like I needed to, and I made it work, and here we are. It's crazy.
But your intention, you don't think personally that anybody should ever live in that house again, every day?
I don't think so. No, because it's like for me personally, I own the house. Like, for instance, I have a tour tonight, I have a tour tomorrow night, and I'm not going to be there to run them. I have 2 different people running them.
Right.
I spread it out between people because I feel like if you're there an overabundance of time and you let your guard down,
exposure.
it could affect you.
Just like Nick Groff.
Correct. But that's why he did that.
He was there for what, like 7, 8 hours?
He was there for 4 days.
Yeah.
And stayed in the house for 3.
So how did he know about the house?
It's funny because I was getting so many inquiries about filming and stuff like that, and I wanted to make sure that the story was told the right way.
Okay.
So when his cousin Justin reached out to me, I didn't know that he was Nick's cousin, and I didn't know that he was affiliated with him at all. So he started telling me things about the house that I didn't even know.
Wow.
So the research was there. Like, it was something, this property is something that Nick's been interested in for a long time, even when he was with the other group, And the fact that they knew more than me, I reached out to them, and when they finally said, I want to film here, I'm like, yeah, you guys can film here. They sent me the contract that said Groff Entertainment. I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is Nick Groff, somebody that I,
you
respected very much in the field. So it worked out. And the thing is with him too, he didn't just come there, film a show and leave. He's vested into it now, too, with me. I mean, he's still researching it, still helping me.
So he didn't just walk away from it. He's drawn into it just as much as you are.
Oh, yeah, very much so.
How many people do that? How many of these shows actually...
Yeah, they just come in to film a show.
And and then it's on to the next.
Yeah, so it seems like he's in it for the long run,
So the book, again, the Hinsdale House, An American Haunting, when did the idea come to write the book?
Well, I met the publisher at an event in Indiana, Eric Verner. And, I first met him at the Buffalo Central Terminal at an event, and I know that one of the girls on my team was telling him about the house. I later met him in Indiana, and we talked a little bit more about him coming up and checking it out. And then
He was there?
Actually, he came to Buffalo for another event.
Okay.
And we had planned at the night that he was there, I was going to take him down with his editors, and we talked in the car and just,
You just had all the stories and
yeah,
said,
and
hey,
he's like,
this
is a good book, and I'm like, well, I'm not a writer, I've never done this before. Come to find out, I'm pretty decent at it,
It's a good book. It's an easy read. It's a quick read. You just start and you can't stop because it's
my friend Tim, the professor at Buff State College, helped me, with making it sound like I know what I'm talking about at times. But he's helped me tremendously with the book. Yeah. So I mean, I made it short, a shorter book. There's a lot of untold stories of this house, but I kind of hinted at a whole bunch of them in here, and then I'm in the process of writing another book right now. So.
Okay. Well, we were there December 3rd, I believe it was. You were nice enough to invite us. We took the trip. Interesting trip, but that's a whole other story. Almost ran out of gas, but that's something else. Again, the house is all by itself, intimidating enough to get up to the house. You have that feeling when you walk in. We investigated. We had some K2 hits. We had the REM pod go off at a certain question or two. We were hearing footsteps upstairs when we were downstairs. And I just wanted to share a few clips with you just to show you what we captured here. This first clip here is we were downstairs, I believe. And it's just this breath that comes out of nowhere. It's a really creepy, and it's the same type. We capture the same type of voice later, but I want you to hear this breath. It's right at the 32 marker on the screen.
Oh yeah, ooh. The K2's going off.
Both of them. Yeah, but he put the REM pod back over there.
Yeah, but so is this one.
Did you hear that?
Yeah. Wow.
That was pretty creepy. Again, upon review, listening with the headphones, we didn't hear it live, but that was the first time we heard it. And then we heard this. This was, Tanya has two K2s on that little table, the chess table, where you have the chess table, and we're trying to use them yes, no, like this for yes, one for no. And a voice responds to the instructions. You have to listen close, though. That's right after she says, this one's for no.
There's two lights on the table. Two boxes.
Listen close.
The one on the right, this one, is going to be the yes, and that one is going to be the no. Okay. Can you come and touch the box again like you did
Very
before?
Distinct.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really creepy. Again, with the headphones on, to hear an intelligent response, like these are the instructions, okay, I'm listening to what you're telling me, that's kind of creepy. And it was the same type of whisper voice. So that was another clip we had. This last one, kind of hard to hear. It's at the 09 point. I heard what sounded like thud, thud, thud. It almost sounded like a car going by, but you know where your house is. There's no main road there.
That happens a lot.
There were no cars around, and we hear boom, 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 and it sounded like it was up above us. And as I'm saying to Tanya, I heard it, another loud thud happens. I heard it. I didn't know if it was... Boom. Did you hear that?
I heard it, yeah.
Was that you?
No.
Obviously, you heard it too.
You heard it again?
Yeah, we heard it live. We heard the breath live too in the OK.
It's funny because, like, in my attempts to even try to stay at the house overnight, you'll be in the living room and you'll hear like boom, 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 boom upstairs, and obviously I know I'm there alone or maybe with one person. Go upstairs, there's nothing there. And then you'll hear something downstairs. It's crazy. Just
definitely, we want to go back there for sure. Nicer weather, so we can investigate outside as well. Let's talk about the Hinsdale house. You do allow paranormal groups to go to the house and investigate.
Yeah.
You have private events as well. How do people find out about the events that you do? How they could book events?
Sure.
Where you're going to be appearing, selling your book. Give us kind of...
Yeah, I mean, the easiest way right now is hauntedhinsdalehouse.com.
Okay.
I am transferring all of that data over to Paranormal Database.
Okay.
It's run by the guys at paranormalwarehouse.com. And what Paranormal Database is, it's going to be a forum for paranormal investigators and different haunted locations that can load all their data into their raw data. So, like for you guys going in, not having to do so much research on the place, all that'll be readily available. Some of the stuff I showed you, like the printouts from Clara Dandy, the handwritten stuff to Father Trabolt, all that stuff will be accessible to the teams that are going in there in an effort to give them more ammunition when they're investigating.
That's a good idea. And that was
hauntedhinsdalehouse.com.
And you can order the book as well?
Yep, you can order
Hinsdale
the book from there.
House,
It's on social media, Facebook and Twitter. You can order the book on, if you look me up, Daniel Class. I have it for sale on there. You can get it on Amazon.com, or if you have Kindle, you can get it on there as well.
Okay. There are so few places in the U.S. that are like this house, that have this story. And as a paranormal investigator, I would definitely recommend it to anyone to take the trip. Well worth the trip. Meeting you, buying the book, I would recommend it all. It was great having you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you.
Daniel will be appearing at the New Jersey Para-Unity Expo on May 13th as well as a guest. Thanks for watching this episode of New Jersey Paranormal. We'll see you next time.